This is Carlos Huante back for another creature talk. This one on Jp4 and Jurassic Fight Club. Uh, I call this the bonus round because Jp4 was never made, and I would never do creature talk on just Jurassic Fight Club because there's really not there's really not that much to say about the project other than just go through the dinosaurs, which most of you already know. And even though our take was really extreme in some aspects, but I'll go through those. And but JP4 and Jurassic Fight Club pair pretty well, so this makes sense. So that being said, let's just go right to it. So let's start with the Allosaur. So the idea that the paleontologist that they had working there at History Channel, uh, uh, well, it wasn't just him; it was also the advisors, but they were all pushing the bird concept. Um, so they wanted me to push the color and really go extreme. And I didn't go as extreme as they wanted on most of these, but I did push color rather than the usual gray um, that is associated with most dinosaurs, or anyways at the time. I think since then people have added a lot of color. The first color, really colorful dinosaurs in a book were from William Stout and his dinosaur book. And I used to work for a place called Dynamation, where um, we made animatronic dinosaurs for museums around the world. And so, they would be sculpted full size, and they would be cast rubber skins from the molds that they would take, and fill foam on top of the actual animatronic armature, and then put the skin over it. It was a lot of work. The guys did some phenomenal work, really, back then. When I first walked into that place at Dynamation, seeing some of Miles Tevis' full-size sculptures were really intimidating and cool. I was very excited. And then on top of that, walking in and seeing his illustrations, the originals that he had done of these dinosaurs, was a mind blower. I mean, this guy could do everything, and so it was really fun. There was Jose Fernandez working there, and Miles Teves. These were all the guys that were there just before I got there. And mind you, I was working on the Ghostbusters animated series at the time, and they had called me in to go and visit this place. Actually, a friend of mine took me, and they wanted to hire me as the illustrator at Dynamation. So I took the job. I ended up with these two jobs at the same time. But all that being said, just to describe my first impression walking into this place and my experience with dinosaurs and prehistoric mammals predominantly. And when I had walked in, the dinosaur shows were already done, and they were moving into these prehistoric mammal shows. And that's where I walked in, and there was a lot of really interesting ideas being pushed around. And for me as an artist, uh, I was coming up with a lot of really fun ideas just because, I mean, if you're going to say this, then what about this? And I would, pitch my ideas to the biologist that they had there and the paleontologist who was Robert T. Barker, who would he would show up as a kind of a guest paleontologist every once in a while because I mean he had his own job. He's the guy out there doing. If you guys don't know who Robert T. Barker is, he's the guy that they caricaturize in Jurassic Park films, the big straw hat and the crazy beard. That's Robert T. Barker. And he'd come in, we'd talk, and I talked to him about a couple ideas for things that I was doing. Um, they were very nice, all these guys. They had crazy ideas that you, you know, And you know they were just throwing these ideas out there, and you know that's what they're doing. They're coming up with ideas too, but based on the science and the information that they have, right? Uh, and I shouldn't say just the science, based on the scientific study. Um, you know, so I would get that information from them. I'd get sheets and look at that stuff and illustrate with that information in hand. So I learned a bit about that. That's actually where I learned a lot of my comparative anatomy from, is that experience um in drawing over bones and having someone from the side of, from the science side, actually critique what I was doing. And that was one hell of an experience, actually, I have to say. So, all that being said, all that stuff is still in me, and I knew enough to know how far to take it, regardless of how they wanted to push it. I'm talking about uh, the new paleontologist guys that I was working with, right? And all the advisors from History Channel and how they were trying to push it. I wasn't going to go that far, but I was going to push it far, right? So, Allosaur, one of the biggest outside of a T-Rex. These things, big Allosaur is, comparable to a T-Rex. I mean, it's just the bone structure isn't as built up as a T-Rex. Like, it's called the Allosaur fragilis because the spine has a lot of windows in it, and it describes how fragile the bones could be. Not that they're super fragile, right? But that they are fragile for the scale of this animal, and they can be broken. Um, T-Rex is a tank. It's got the neck that is like for a ramming tool. It's built up in the right behind the skull, and the skull is huge on a T-Rex in proportion to the body. So this animal is much more proportionate in that the front arms are longer, and the head is reduced in scale. This thing is built for a little bit more speed than the T-Rex is. So anyway, so I gave him the red face just to be dramatic here. And I chose, again, designing for drama and pushing the color. But still trying to keep it within the realm of, if I reduced all the saturation and you were to see this in black and white, outside of the color, you would just see an animal that had camouflage pattern on it. So that's the way I was approaching these. So this is the Giganoto from the Allosaur is an North American animal, predominantly here, I believe. Still, that's the idea. I'm not up on all the latest. I'm up to a degree, but not on everything. So you're gonna have to bear with me as I go through these. I might miss some things, okay, for all you dino geeks out there. The Giganoto, I really pushed the color again, but if you were to, again, to desaturate this, it would go gray, and it would just look like it had a slight pattern on it. That's all. So the colors are pushed, but if you look at these and you just reduce this to a black and white palette, all these will go gray. You desaturate it, everything goes gray. Uh, you know, but the idea was that they were pushing the bird idea, so I went with color. Uh, the relationship between dinosaurs and birds. Giganoto, probably one of the biggest theropods out there that they've discovered so far, besides the Spinosaur, obviously, which is the biggest. Giganoto. I don't think these things were built up as a T-Rex either, even though they're as big as they are. The T-Rex is a little bit taller than this, um, than the Giganoto, but equally as long, if not longer. They're waffling back and forth. I've heard that they are longer, that they're up to 46 feet long, the Giganoto, and I've heard other people say that no, 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 they are only like 30 feet long, and so, there you go. Who knows? So that being said, here's the Giganoto, big animal, biggest one besides Spinosaur, from what I understand, and then the T-Rex. But Again, they're waffling on this one. They waffled on this Carcharodontosaur also. Um, the Carcharodontosaur is the another big one, and this one actually would get almost as long as the Giganoto, but not quite. But now they're saying this is not that big either, and it could have been smaller. So I don't know. The Carcharodontosaur named after the teeth, I believe, because they call it the great white shark dinosaur. These are like blades, each tooth. You same with the T-Rex. So they're like steak knives, right? So pretty interesting. I mean, these are real animals. They have bones, fossils of these things, not monsters. Pretty damn interesting. I mean, this is really cool stuff. I'm moving my hands here as I'm talking, but you can't see me, so it sounds, it's less dramatic. My expression on how interesting these animals are. Uh, but again, if I was to desaturate this, right, all this, it would look like a camouflage. That's all. Um, so I try to stay realistic with the pattern, but I added more color and variation in here to push the whole bird relationship idea that they were pushing me to do from the History Channel people. Okay, so the Carcharodontosaur. This is a Ceratosaur, one of my favorites when I was a kid. Uh, it's like, it's like a T-Rex with a horn. Not quite as big, but that's the way I saw it when I was a kid. I thought it was just, a lot of the other dinosaurs hadn't really been discovered or weren't popularized yet, like, some of the other horned theropods. So anyway, I stayed in the sandy kind of colors with this one to contrast the others. And I'm thinking about the episodes, the actual episodes of the series. So not everything is wild. So, I'd give some rest to everyone's eyes in this episode and a little bit more realistic, although the pattern is a little bit wild, right, with this kind of leopard print here. Um, so this is the Majungasaurus, or now they're just calling it the Majungasaurus now. Madagascar theropod. It's taller than all the rest, um, but it's not as long. So it's in altogether, it's not that big, but it's taller than a T-Rex, taller than all the others. Because it stands, I don't know if that's just because it stands more upright or the legs are longer in the back. Um, but at first they were saying that this Majunga was really huge and the biggest of all of them, but um, it all changed within. Of course, all this is changing always from one day to the next. So imagine in the last, I don't know when this show actually aired, um, more than 7, 8 years ago. So things have changed. Uh, but I do see these illustrations out there. The idea was that they wanted all this kind of rooster uh, um, detail, I guess you would call it, all these this hanging flesh off of this animal, which I don't know where they got that from, but that's what they told me to do. So I did it, and they wanted all the scoots all over the skin, which I did. Uh, so this is a pretty wild animal, looking animal, from their perspective. I don't know enough to know how they're getting all this information. I mean, if I understood the reasoning behind it, I would probably disagree with a lot of this stuff. I I, I really believe that I would disagree with this stuff being on there. I don't know where they're getting the idea that it had all this kind of detail. Um, but there it is, the Majungasaurus, whatever you want to call it. Pretty neat though. I mean, it's still fun. I mean, the idea of just trying different things and experimenting. I mean, you can't get that serious and crazy about it. You can to a degree if you want to be accurate, and I get that, and I get it. I like to argue too, for the sake of accuracy, and uh, just because you have the interest in studying things. Uh, so but trying things out to see what it would look like, within reason, and they say that this is reasonable, idea, that I decided to, go as far as I could within the realm of reality here, anyways. Sorry, I was getting distracted. My dog is going nuts over here. Um, anyway, so onward. This is the Albertosaur. The Albertosaur is, I actually thought, was the most elegant of all these theropods that we did for this series. Um, I thought he was, and the way that they actually put him in the episode, there were, I think, 3 of them running through the episode, and they looked really good. They did a really nice job with this one. Uh, it's a little bit more subdued with color, and a little bit, softer with all the gradations. Um, and more in the gray realm. I liked this one quite a bit, actually, more than I expected to. I just thought it was going to be another, variant of the theropod frame, and it wasn't. It was really interesting, I thought. So I liked how graceful this one looks. Uh, Pretty neat. This is the Nano-Tyrannosaur. Now, the Nano-Tyrannosaur is Robert T. Bakker's baby. This is his discovery, and he actually has a good argument for this one. When I saw a whole show where he pitches this idea and talks about it, and you know, uh, he has some good points. He says that there's areas in the skull that do not match up with the T-Rex at all, and they wouldn't just go away, or the T-Rex wouldn't, in the full size, in the full grown adult, wouldn't just grow whole other parts, or other parts wouldn't disappear that were in this skull. There's just a lot of stuff that he was arguing with the skull, um, that made a lot of sense. It was a good argument. Uh, Obviously, the animal is still out there as an idea, so it hasn't been thrown out. Um, so anyway, I mean, it looks like an adolescent, this skeleton that I worked over, and which all of these are worked over skeletons that I was given, um, and you can't escape that. You're stuck, within those bookends. So as weird as they look and as awkward as they look, you have to stay there and work with that. So I did. And this one looks really awkward to me. The legs are just really long and weird looking. And, you know, you see a lot of illustrations of dinosaurs online. And, a lot of them are neutralized, from what makes that particular animal interesting. Uh, like a lot of people would not illustrate this thing as awkwardly as this, right? Because look at how awkward these proportions are. They would make this tail fatter. They would make this knee joint fall just a little bit further and shorten this distance right here, you know, and this distance as well because it looks too long. Um, but this is what it was. This is what the bones are. So, uh, you know, the hands are really it's a index finger and a thumb, uh, I believe, and it's so you would think it's just these 2 fingers, that come out, but no, it's an index finger and a thumb, actually. Pretty interesting. I mean, it's just this is alien structure here. We're not used to seeing this stuff, uh, and you want to neutralize it and make everything work proportionately. You want to make everything work when you work over this stuff, but if you have the bones there, you can't do that. So, I mean, so you look at all these and you can see the difference, right? The closer of the two would be this Allosaur and this Ceratosaur, right? And they're pretty identical. look at that. I mean, with just the head difference. And I think what it is that they don't have a full skeleton for either the Ceratosaur. They may by now, but they have most of the parts, but a lot of them are put together and they fabricate parts for a lot of all the missing parts anyways for a lot of these dinosaurs. So, you know, interesting anyways. So, Nano-T-Rex. Now, this is the Utahraptor. The Utahraptor is the raptor that they used as reference for the first Jurassic Park film, from what I understand. And it was a recent discovery back then. They had just put I think it had been discovered prior to that, but it was when they first assembled the Utahraptor skeleton. So it had been discovered in parts, and they finally assembled it just around the time they were making Jurassic Park. Fortunately for them, because they were able to use it as reference, this is the biggest of all the raptors. I mean, it's 8 feet tall. It's a beast. It's a tank. It's a bulldog. It couldn't run fast apparently, but it could. I mean, it would take you down. I mean, you say it couldn't run fast, but I mean, what does that mean? So it doesn't run, 20 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour, but it can run like 15 miles an hour. So either way, it's going to get you, right? And it's huge. So you'd stand about, somewhere here if you're 6 feet tall. That's a big raptor. Not like the raptors that they keep on calling them velociraptors in Jurassic Park. They were not velociraptors. They were some made-up version of raptor that was more like a combination of a Deinonychus, whatever you want to call it, Deinonychus, and this Utah, you know. But it was not a velociraptor. The velociraptor actually has a really interesting head, and it has like a snaggletooth up in the front. Really interesting animal. And I think it's the most interesting actually out of all of them in the head. So they took out the most interesting part for the character in the film, which was really weird. They just neutralized it, So, you know, uh, let's see. And so, one of the other things to talk about here is that, so these things are protofeathers, not feathers, which they tend to actually illustrate all the Deinonychus now illustrations with with feathers, which is really, I just don't buy it. Even as much as they keep on trying to sell it, I don't buy it. I just don't. I mean, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but we don't know that. I do buy this idea of protofeathers, which are these shafts that would stick out of the skin, and they would grow out of the skin, and on the tip, they would break up into these feathery type hairs, but they weren't feathers yet. It was more like this really light hair, the breakup of that shaft, that tube, uh, these little stalks. And I thought that was, I find that a little bit more believable rather than feathers, because we don't have any impressions of anything showing anything other than the Archaeopteryx and feathers. So anyways, I believe that's still the case. But all you dinosaur geeks could argue with me about that one. So maybe not. This is a Deinonychus, smaller. I think it's up to 3 feet tall. And I like this one actually. I like the color combination. Again, the color is being pushed, but I push this one more in related to like a lizard. I actually seen one back here in my yard that proves my idea here that I had done many, many years ago. And I saw a lizard back here in my backyard, and it's half blue. This almost this color of blue, and then it goes gray. Um, you know, with this super long ribbon of a tail. Very interesting. I've tried to get it on film, not to capture it, but to just photograph it at least. And I'm never with my phone when I'm back when I see it through the kitchen window. Um, so anyway, uh, yeah, the Deinonychus without feathers, and actually no proto feathers either on this one. This is a Dromaeosaur with many proto feather stalks sticking out. These little shafts everywhere. Um, yeah, I like this idea. I actually would have liked to have even broken the tips off and shredded them more to be a little bit more like these feathery type of hairs, which I think could be pretty interesting, and I believe it. I believe this, and you get this enough, and they start evolving into feathers, um, you know. And I didn't get into all the detail. We were going through this show super fast. I mean, super fast. I was just blowing these things out. Um, so I would have probably given this a whole grade back into the scales. So not just these shafts sticking out. I would have done like maybe 4 layers going back and turning into the scaly texture here. Um, and same here. I would have done that too, given it a little bit more blend off. Um, but I like the idea of it looking like it had a mohawk too. So, but this thing's about 18 inches tall. Maybe a little. I think maybe about 3 feet long, so or more, something. Um, Interesting animals. You think it's small, but I mean, not with that mouth, and these hands and that. No, this would be a bad scene because they would hunt in packs possibly. So the Albertosaur, this would be now the prey for whatever animal that they would actually be showing these with, and I think it was the Allosaur that was hunting the Albertosaur. So this one I stayed a little bit more in the gray tones here. I still gave it a kind of a funky cool pattern here and made it a gray that was more on the purple side, but it's still gray. You know, you could believe this thing lives in a water area, maybe a dirty water area. Uh, I like this one quite a bit, actually. This is a Tenontosaur. Um, and this of the Iguanodon family. I think they had in the episode that they had these guys in, they were being attacked by a pack of Deinonychus. Uh, and I gave it this pattern to break it up, thinking that it would be in the water also. So, this would be the water line. Uh, but still in the grays here. Uh, I like this one quite a bit too. This one was a lot of fun to illustrate. The Gastonia. I don't know who they had dealing with this one. I don't remember. But top view just for the guys to get an idea of what this would look like, symmetry. The Stego, this was a really stylized skeleton in my opinion. I thought it was a little over stylized, but I worked with it. One of the interesting little notes that I have about this one is that some of the Allosaur skeletons have holes in the rib cage area that actually perfectly fit one of the spikes of a Stegosaur. So they know that these Stegosaur are being hunted by Allosaur, so that's pretty interesting. And then they've found, skeletons of Stegosaur with the back horns really worn down, uh, implying that they actually had to fight a lot off these, prey, which would probably been the Allosaur quite a bit. Pretty interesting. This guy stayed within the gray tones, but still contrasts, which makes it look a little bit more exaggerated, you know. This is a Camarasaur, one of the smaller of this whole group. These are the sauropods. These, the Brachiosaur family, smaller one of that group. The biggest would be like the Supersaur, which for a minute was called the Ultrasaur, and then they realized that they were just talking about a Supersaur, and then it became a name battle game between the, because someone called it the Ultrasaur, they couldn't call this one the Ultrasaur anymore because they own the rights to that name in South Korea. So they have their Ultrasaur, which is really just a Supersaur, and the American had to call his Supersaur. So that South Koreans have the Ultrasaur, and we have this. It gets, yeah. So I mean, look, you see what I'm trying to tell you. See how everyone's, it gets silly, and they're making stuff up, and they get excited just like anyone else. And these are scientists, okay? Anyway, people are people no matter what you do. But I like these a lot. I like this one. Now they're becoming less dinosaur and more like mammals. With these, going back to this Edmontosaur, you can see the division now as these start to become quadrupeds, from the Iguanodon family with these hands, these mitts. Hadrosaur also, and Iguanodon kind of mitts that these things have here. Still having the beak, but still looks actually very similar to an Iguanodon. These start to look like mammals now. The division between these and the theropods, these sauropods. This is the Pachyrhino. They wanted me to make it look, they wanted me to actually put the horn on in the front. One of my favorite animals also, but I like it in the sense that I like that it has a huge stump in the front, not this horn. But this is what I was asked to do, so I did it. I added a little more color on this one just because they kept on pushing me to exaggerate the color, which I really do not believe this animal would have. So, but I just toned the grays a little bit more colorful, but kept it in the gray area, you know. This is the Megalodon, which in this episode would hunt the sperm whale. The Megalodon is a super great white, which I bet if we were ever to see a real Megalodon, it wouldn't be this torpedo of a perfect version of a great white. It would be a little dumpier looking and a little bit more lumbery rather than this torpedo at this scale. There's weight distribution and gravity. Uh, you know, uh, you still have to move those parts at that scale so the body changes. There's all this stuff that happens to animals when they get bigger, regardless of whether or not this thing is being floated in water. Uh, there's just stuff, there's compensation that the body does for animals that get bigger, so um, there you go. That's just my idea. That's the way I look at this stuff. And I did this as a great white because that's, what everyone knows it as. And I didn't have time to really screw around with this thing and make it exactly what I thought it should be. So, and I don't even know if this actually made it into the show, to be honest with you. I don't remember seeing it. So, this is just a standard sperm whale. So, okay, so that is Jurassic Park Fight Club. Sorry, the Jurassic Fight Club, not Jurassic Park Fight, the Jurassic Fight Club for History Channel. And so now we're going to get into Jp4. So now these are dinosaurs, animals, right? With exaggerated color, but they're still based on the skeletons. These are not monsters. These are animals. And We are now going to go into the monster realm. Jp4. So Jp4, the story of Jp4. Um, Jp4 is, so what happened, this is like back in 2004. Joe Johnston came to ILM, and he had this idea for a movie pitch that he wanted to do, and he wanted an artist to work with them. They asked me to go and sit in the room with Joe Johnston, and we sat in this room, and he essentially just told me his idea for a new version of Jurassic Park, which essentially would be a franchise killer. And not to make it a franchise killer, but it would be, because we would be deviating from the franchise that now it had already been done in 3 movies, Jurassic Park, and really the same story is already being regurgitated, over and over and over again. I mean, it's all, and so to move it away and go off on a tangent, that's what the idea for this movie was. Which, if you're going to do that, sure, then I like it. You know what I mean? It's not going to be Jurassic Park anymore. It's going to be something else. Fine. And if they want to continue, which JP4 eventually became Jurassic World some years ago, that's fine. Which it did change. Jurassic World is still based on Jurassic Park, so it works. This movie is more of a tangent off of an offshoot from the Jurassic Park property, which, from that perspective, I like it a lot. And I know that this turns a lot of people over, you know what I mean? And they're rolling around in rage and anger, you know what I mean? Gritting their teeth. But if you look at this not as a Jurassic Park movie, but as an offshoot of Jurassic Park, this is a fun science fiction horror action adventure film. I mean, how many of those are out there? I think that still, I think they should make this movie. And I think it would have I think people would actually want to see this. I think this would do really, really well because it has a lot to offer. It's not just, you know, another dinosaur Jurassic Park film, you know what I mean, where they get in trouble with the dinosaurs getting out, and now they got to go and you know fix it and let the T-Rex out to kill it again. Same story over and over and over again, right? So that being said, here we go. So the idea was that the military gets a hold of this dinosaur DNA, and they want to experiment and make a super soldier. So they make these Dino Men, and they're Raptor Men, which is what this is a study of here. A little drawing. Started playing with these heads just to see how to go with these heads, which I didn't have any time to go further with this, which I would have loved to. Still, to this day, would like to do that. But, because I don't think these are it yet. I just started, and then I had to move on. So, but still, lizard man ideas. More lizard than man back in the day, so I was still working traditionally here. This is just airbrushed right over the drawing and white out around the drawing, just a white out pen. And then this is just the color version. You can see how I fixed the rib cage area, softened it up, and made it one shape rather than all these separate shapes here, which were too soft for me. I wanted it just to be like a board. And this is still roughed, but because I had to move fast. But the Raptor Man, still more dino than man. This one is more on the lines of a lizard man, so this guy you can see running from, flopping his legs from side to side as it's running at you with his legs, arms being hung down as an anchor, kind of as a pendulum to keep him anchored, and straight as his legs flop to the side as he's running. This could be really scary, and I thought this was the way to go, in my opinion. More ideas for the same. More dino than man. Again, trying to find that ratio, This is based on Robert T. Bacher's running Deinonychus drawing, actually. And the funny story about this is that this particular drawing, um, was made into a sculpture. Sorry, I got distracted again. My dog. He's not a small dog. He's 100-pound Akita, so he's just really active right now, and I don't know what's going on with him. But this this drawing was actually sculpted by a friend of mine after all this was done, and he's a modeler that worked with me on this show that we developed rapid prototyping at ILM with this project, right? And he, just for the fun of it, sculpted a big sculpture of this character. And I'm not too sure he finished the entire thing, but he really developed the upper body. And it looked really cool. He did a really great job. And so say back in let's see, when would that have been? Maybe about the time that they were working on Jurassic World. And I'm trying to remember when that was. Anyway, back at that time, about the time that they were working on Jurassic World, someone had leaked all this imagery out, along with photos of my friend's sculpture that was his own personal sculpture, right? It had nothing to do with it. Now, this project had already existed for 12 years and was dead, this Jp4. So it wasn't a big secret anymore. I had it on my website as part of my portfolio of dead movies that had been dead for over a decade. So the idea that this was some big reveal was not that at all, but it was released and framed as a release of Jp4, which was Jurassic World. And so there was everyone's hands were up in the air and everyone was freaked out over it, all the studios, and it turned into a big overreaction over nothing. But I don't know where that leak came from. It was all over the internet and had pictures even of my friend's sculpture, which is really, really weird. I have no idea how that got out there, but they came after me, saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm looking at them like, "What? What are you talking about? This stuff has been out forever. It's a dead project." And, yeah, but we're doing JP4. And it's like, okay, so cool. You got my thumbs up. That's awesome. But I have nothing to do with it. So, yeah, craziness. So Jurassic World had nothing to do with this at all, except for the fact that they actually they did give the raptors some sort of ability to communicate, which I thought was interesting. So there you go. I thought that was pretty cool. Actually, I thought that was interesting, not pretty cool. I thought that was interesting in that it looked like they took a piece of what we were doing here and subtly added it into Jurassic World. But I prefer this idea to be made than what they did in Jurassic World with the raptors. Um, you know, I don't know. It's just me. I mean, they're making dinosaurs up in that thing with that thing that black dinosaur thing that they made. That's a monster, right? That's no longer a dinosaur. That's a monster. It's a fabricated creature. It's an artificial creature. It's no long. It's not a real dinosaur. I mean, not that. I mean, they have a tendency of doing that in these movies, anyways. So, but so if they're going there, why not go here and just make an offshoot movie and with all these things in it? So again, more studies on this. This is marker inks right over the, just sprayed right onto this, onto the paper here. So they were also supposed to have these augmented parts, which they would be armed, you know. And I thought this was actually pretty fun for me to illustrate. I loved this, and I know I've read some of the comments when I posted these images where people get really upset and they get a little bit hostile. which I love, by the way. I cannot be insulted by any of those reactions. I love that people get that they're that married to the property, and I find it very funny when people get angry about stuff, because you have to be more open to the fact that this could be a really fun movie that is not Jurassic Park, uh, that is an offshoot, which I think would be really, really fun. How could this suck? You know, how could this be a bad idea? Uh, I mean, not as a Jurassic Park film, but as an offshoot. You know, of course, that was not the intention from the director. He wanted to pitch this as Jp4, but I was looking at it more as an offshoot, to be honest with you, which I think it still should be. I think these guys at the studio are overlooking something that could be pretty damn cool. Uh, just just my thoughts, you know. So, okay, working this far, I looked at Joe and I said, "Hey, man, since you have all these dino men, uh, we should do a giant T-Rex man." I mean, this is me being a kid now, okay? We should do a giant T-Rex man. And if we're going to go there, we have to have the ultimate dinosaur battle. So we should have a giant T-Rex man fighting a giant Triceratops man. Uh, this would be the ultimate kid toy monster fight, you know? Uh, it has to happen. And Joe, just looked at me and he just kind of chuckled. He goes, "Yeah, let's do that. Go ahead, draw that." I said, "Okay, cool." So I did, and this is my giant T-Rex man. Uh, Now all these have these little antennas sticking out, and this would be for say, the Wi-Fi connection to the brain, which would be off-site somewhere, where they could control all these giant beasts, right? Um, and this is a sketch that I had done thinking of a version of a T-Rex man that they had attached to all these, um, you know, restraints into the wall where they were actually studying it. This would be the tortured one, and this would be the successful one that maybe they release, or maybe they're the same. I don't know. So it'd be a wild scene, though. This would be one fun, crazy monster movie, let me tell you. Here's a Triceratops man, and that's JP4, and this is all there is for this movie, okay, from when we worked on it. Now, if there's other stuff that's been released, like I heard there's a treatment or a script that's out there that people have read. Um, I don't know what that is. There was no script. Uh, so they may have written a treatment before they pitched it to Spielberg, and at first Spielberg was just letting Joe go, and then I think he looked at it and finally realized what was going on, and he just he was working on War of the Worlds at the time, and I think when he realized what we were doing, he just said no, you know, and that he still wanted it to continue on, so they did. Uh, so that was that. But yeah, there was nothing else though, as far as I know. Um, from when I developed all this imagery, I developed it from nothing. There was nothing. So there it is. Anyway, so there's JP4 and Jurassic Fight Club. Uh, I hope you guys enjoy these talks and enjoyed this episode. This is the bonus round, JP4, the Never Made JP4, and Jurassic Fight Club. And if you like it, let me know in the comments and the likes. I appreciate it. It does encourage me to want to do these more. Um, so thanks, and thanks for listening.